Welcome back everyone to another episode of From the Woods Presents. Beautiful winter day here, kind of chilly, and on these chilly days Mrs. From the Woods and I like to have a fire in the fireplace, and of course having a fire requires firewood, and having firewood requires a place to put it. And we in the past have just kind of stacked it on the back, on the front steps here, just stacked it as best as we could, and the plan was always to have a little bit of a firewood storage rack, and that's today's project. We're going to make a firewood storage rack out of some logs in the forest and a bit of scrap metal, and we're glad that you could join us, and hopefully you enjoy this video, and we're about to get started, so let's go. So as I said previously, this little landing at the front steps is where we store or stack the firewood that we plan to use. And yeah, a little bit inconvenient, so to speak, and we're going to be making a firewood rack here. Now this space here, of course, the door is a little bit close to the corner, so we have to keep that in mind. I cut my firewood at 14 to 15 inches. It works better in the fireplace and for stacking in this location. And this is about, well, just under 5 feet. So we're going to make the rack just a little bit smaller than that opening. No video is complete without a quick glimpse of the current mouse patrol. That's Jessie Mom on the left and Jessie's son on the right. A while back we were at one of the retail supply stores, and I saw this at the front door and thought, yeah, that would be kind of nice for the front steps. So I came up with a couple of dimensions that I thought would work for that area at the front door. The step landing is 58 inches deep, so I thought if I made it 55 inches and 45 to 48 inches tall and about 12 inches wide, that would work for that opening and stack a half decent amount of firewood. And yeah, so it'll probably develop as we go. I'm not sure if I'm going to do the cross members. We'll see what kind of wood's in the forest first and see what we bring into the shop. But I kind of like that design, so we're going to attempt to make that style of a wood rack. I've got these two lengths of pipe that were in the metal pile for, oh, I don't know how long, and I don't even remember where I got them, quite honestly. But this pipe is 16th inch thick, and it's 3 inches outside diameter, and I think there's enough here to make all the pieces that I need for the corners at the bottom of the unit. So now we have to go into the forest and pick out some logs. Now we're thinking maybe spruce, probably, but possibly aspen. We'll see what's out there. Okay, we're in our firewood processing area, and we're going to just look through what I have, or maybe even cut down some of the dead standing that might work for our purposes of making our firewood stand. Here's a little pile that I've been saving for who knows what. I'm looking for trees that are just slightly over 3 inches big, and then I can cut them down or lay them down to fit inside that metal post. But we've also got a half decent dead standing right there, just a little bit into the forest there, so maybe we'll cut that down. That looks pretty consistent all the way up. We should be able to get all that we need out of what's in this pile and maybe that tree. I brought in about 10 pieces of spruce. Most of it is over 3 inches. It has to be a little bit over 3 inches to fit nicely into that pipe. So we'll let this thaw out, let the snow melt off of it, and then I'll sort through it and see what we got. The pipes that I have are 25.5 inches long. And what I thought would be good dimensions would be 8 inches tall with a 4-inch piece welded onto the side for the rails, the bottom rails. So I have to cut 4 pieces at 8 and 4 pieces at 4. We've got our metal bandsaw set up at 8 inches with the stop, and we'll cut the 4 8-inch ones first. The 8 pieces are cut. I use the square end on the long ones so that I have a nice flat surface on the ground. Yeah, the metal bandsaw drifts so badly. It doesn't matter what I do to adjust it or how slow I cut it. It just tends to drift. I don't know if you can see this on some of these pieces that they're not quite standing straight, and that's just because the blade drifts so badly. So now the trick is, I've got to figure out how to get this to mate nicely with the longer pieces to achieve this effect so that I have 4 corners. I've opted for the hole saw method. I have a 3-inch hole saw, which is almost exactly the size of this pipe. And I've made a little jig to hold the pipe, because you don't want this moving, of course, in the drill press. And I've made a 3-inch bottom, so it's almost exactly the size of the pipe. I've marked a little center on there, and I don't know if you can see this, but I made a little line that it goes all the way across. I marked a point that's 2.5 inches up, because I want the bottom rails to be 1 inch off the ground. And then my assumption then is, if I line up this center to the line on the pipe, I should have top dead center. So we're going to put the hole saw in the drill press and give it a shot. That was definitely the way to go with the hole saw, rather than trying to grind the small piece to fit the large piece. Went relatively quickly, had a few snags on the drill press. You can see that that's going to be beautiful, 1 inch off the ground for the bottom rails. And clean up the cuts, we'll tack them together, and I think the corners are almost done. Just like most of my projects, it's a work in progress, and things change and morph as you go along. And my lathe only has 41 inches clear in between. So I'm going to have to shorten the overall length of the unit. And so the next step is to cut those bottom rails down to 41. The next step is to go through these logs that I brought in that are warming up here in the shop. They'll have to be peeled, of course, but most of them are over 3 inches or just slightly over. There's 1 or 2 that are a little bit less, so I'll have to pull those out. So I thought maybe these 2 logs at the end for the rails on the bottom, and then I'll pick out the 4 best for the ends. I've got one of the bottom rails installed on the lathe, and I've estimated the center as close as possible, and the inside of the pipe is 2 7/8, so I'm going to be lathing down the ends for 2.5 inches in on each end, down to 2 7/8. That's one rail. So we've made the tenons to 2 7/8, just slightly over, so they'll be a bit tight. And I peeled the rest just to give it that peeled log look. And we're going to take this one out and see if it fits. I did the second bottom rail off camera. Had to reduce the overall length by about 5-6 inches. So we're at about 48.5 to 48.25, somewhere in that range. Not too bad. We're going to be higher than usual, so we'll have about the same amount of firewood storage. Now it's on to the uprights. All the 4 uprights are done now. The only difference from the rails are that it's got a 4-inch tenon, and only on the bottom. All the log portions are done. The 4 uprights have been lathed, and the top bottom rails. The only thing that has to be done to them yet is to cut them down a little bit and to get rid of that mark from the lathe, from the live center, and to round over that top edge to give it a bit of a detail. Now we got to figure out how to keep it apart and sturdy. I have to think that one over. I'm not sure if I'm going to do wood or just a metal brace across the bottom. I've opted for a metal brace on the bottom, so I'll grind that to fit the round pipe, weld that in place to get my final dimension. Mrs. From the Woods and I have had a consult, and she likes that look of the rail across the uprights, so we're going to do that. I have these tenon drill bits that I picked up at Lee Valley in the thoughts that I'd be making some log furniture, and they're going to come in hand today. So I'm going to start with the 1.5 inch tenon and then take it down to a 1 inch tenon, but I won't know the final dimension until I have the bottoms welded. Got the uprights on the bench here with the cross braces that I've run the tenons on and peeled. Now we got to figure out how to make them parallel. Each upright is slightly different, so this might take a bit of thought. I've marked out the uprights, and I just made a line on the side of it with that 2x2 oak, and we're going to have to cut it to 36 inches from the beginning of the tenon right here, and I made a mark at 6 inches up, one at 18 and one at 30. And we'll just have to eyeball it to get it perpendicular. So I think I was worried for nothing. The holes that I drilled with the 1 inch Forstner bit is a little bit larger than the tenon itself, so there is a bit of play. And I think it looks pretty good. I got them nicely spaced. So the next step will be to get the corners, assemble everything, and then I can determine the final length of the cross pieces. I've got a little window of nice weather, so we're going to weld these together quickly. And I'm going to do the cross brace. You see I've marked the edge, so I'll have to grind that to fit the pipe and then weld that as a cross piece. But we'll get these sanded up, all the rough edges off, and get the welder fired up and get them tacked together. The corners are welded, and I did that off camera because quite frankly, I'm a little embarrassed about my welding skills. Maybe I'll have to put that on my Christmas wish list, welding classes. At any rate, they're strong enough, and I've kind of cleaned it up with a bit of auto body filler, and we've got in the spray area, and I happen to find a couple of cans of this trim clad hammered finish in black, which is left over from another project. So we'll use that to paint these up. The corners are painted and the uprights have the cross members fitted. Now it's a matter of getting them glued together and firmed up so that we can fasten them inside the or into the corners. And I'm just going to use a few lag screws for that and some PL 400 just to make sure that it sticks together and stands up straight for a long time. So let's get to that. It's lag screwed together and turned out to be nice and tight. A little out of square, but with logs that are of different sizes and different shapes, that's to be somewhat expected. But overall, it turned out really nice. We're going to give this a little bit of a personal touch before we finish it, and that's going to be next. A couple years ago, my son got this for me as a gift, and it's a little branding iron saying handcrafted by me. And I haven't had too many projects that I've been able to use this on, but I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to give it another try. This branding iron is made by Brand New Industries. Catchy. Supposed to heat these up to a certain point, but not red hot. And I've flattened out a little area on the right hand side, facing out of course, so that everybody can enjoy this nice brand we're going to put on here. And let's get the torch out, heat it up, and see what it looks like. Well, I think I had the branding iron a little bit too hot, but I think overall it turned out quite nice. Now we're going to stand it up and get a finish on all the wood portions of the firewood rack. The firewood rack is now finished. We used a semi-transparent acrylic wood stain from Beauty Tone. The color we used is Canadian Cedar. Turned out a little bit darker than I had anticipated. The product we usually use is cedar, and that's not available anymore. So we had to settle for this. It's not a bad color overall, but a bit darker than I like. The corners turned out really well after it's all said and done. The brand turned out really nicely. Could have been a bit crisper, but I think I left it on a little bit too long. We'll know better for next time. At any rate, the firewood rack is finished. We hope that you enjoyed this video, and we'd love it if you'd join us again for another video coming soon. Thanks for watching.